moments of his life are shared in his journal. After he'd been running for days and was dying from thirst and starvation, he managed to escape into a hole and discover a grave with his name on it. Spencer knew he would die here, and so he ends up dying with his last thoughts being how regretful he was to get his family involved here. That's a fascinating way to finally explain why the mansion is so convoluted, because that was always the go-to game logic joke for this franchise. It was to Resident Evil as Mario eating mushrooms means that he is high was to Super Mario Brothers. He explains it all very nicely in a don't think about it kind of way. I mean, it doesn't seem like the puzzles work backwards, and they all sequentially lead us straight to the lab, not an escape. The only reason you don't run out the front door in this game is because there's a bunch of zombie dogs out there. I don't think that was a problem back then. And that's not even asking if the people who worked and lived here had to solve abstract puzzles or carry around medallions to get from one place to another. It is kind of funny, though, that Georgie struggled so hard and ended up dying to some of the most simplest puzzles ever. He entered his journal right at his grave.
It's a map of this place back when
all he had to do was press a button to open it up.
There should be a ventilation tunnel on the ground.
And that'll get us out of here?
But since the
It should, but it's so narrow, you might be the only one who can fit through.
But that's not where this story ends.
So I'll get help and come back, right? Looks like it's a race against time.
Now that we've lost communications, there's nothing else we can do. Alright everyone, we gotta hurry up and find a way through that tunnel. It's gonna be our way out of here.
We're going through their own personal hell. Both were seen as disposable test subjects and were treated to a vast number of experiments. Both were injected with an early form of the T-virus, known as the progenitor virus. Jessica, the wife, tried her best to comfort her daughter, Lisa, and even scheduled an escape attempt. But before that could happen, Jessica was executed for not having a progressive enough reaction to progenitor. As the days went on,
this game is very hard for me. It's probably easy for a lot of people out there, but it's really hard for me.
But at the cost of her body mutating and her mind slowly deteriorating, eventually losing her ability to even form coherent sentences, and driven by only one desire to reunite with her parents again. Umbrella tried to impersonate Jessica at one point, but Lisa saw right through it, resulting in her violently cutting off the imposter's face with an intention of bringing it back to her real mother. At some point, she seemed to have found her mother's coffin, but couldn't find out how to open it, so she attached the face she took onto her own. And she didn't stop there either.
Dude, that's my boy Marvin. What's up, dude?
As well as several other faces that were all added to the collection.
What up, bro?
Other faces were likely taken off of even more
Marvin, what up, dude?
Some of which she believed to be impersonating her mother. Lisa's journal and George's journal
let's get the help me.
George was alive
Get
several days after she
spot, bro.
found her. So either she stopped understanding how to record dates properly, or she took the face of some random guy in the complex in a grotesque attempt to bring her family together again. After that, it seems like she was used for further experiments for decades. That new Western note suggests that she was a reference point by Birkin to develop the G-virus. At some point, she gained freedom from the testing and began to live in the Arclay Mountains, inside a tiny shack out in the forest, and she moved about via the tunnels spread throughout the mansion, searching for her mother, collecting faces for the flesh collage she constantly has on her head. Now that's some extra heavy stuff. Before, the highlight in storytelling of Resident Evil 1 was the itchy tasty note, but after so many similar repeats of it in the sequels, it lost its uniqueness. So the addition of Lisa Trevor was fantastic. Not only is her story like itchy tasty times 10, but she actively affects you in the game. One of the tensest moments is when you explore her cabin in near silence, just knowing that any second something is gonna happen. Hearing her door open off screen.
My cat, Luna.
You're being blindsided by her as you try to leave. All this occurring before you even really knew who she was, so you're likely freaking out as you race past this horrible gremlin who's trying to block you in. This is an amazing addition.
Bro, I don't ever remember.
Everything else by
I got like snuff.
perfectly capturing the twisted themes of the plot.
Man, where's Nemesis?
Just how evil Umbrella can be, offering a level of pity for this horrifying flesh pile that keeps trying to kill you and steal your face, and ending with you possibly providing a bit of relief to her as you finally reunite her with her mother's long dead body.
No, thank you.
The source for the game has clearly been improved from the original. Things like the Trevor family are great additions that, while introducing some new questions, are at least better than not even attempting to. It's just a shame that the story was never that way more could have been done to improve the plot and characters than what we originally had. There were even a few noticeable problems that carried over almost word for word because the remake wanted to be so faithful to the original. Like, remember when you go for the good ending in Chris's campaign? After defeating the tyrants for the first time, Rebecca offers this brilliant idea to blow up the whole place before a secure escape route has even been confirmed. Imagine if they turned on the self-destruct sequence, but the elevator to the helipad was just broken, or there were no flares to get Brad's attention, or if any of the doors were rusted or electronically shut. And that's not even getting into the fact that they're enthusiastically blowing up all of the evidence in the mansion. There is so much shit here to implicate Umbrella, and they're just like, nah, get rid of it, who cares? We'll show them who's boss.
I saw a research file on this web. It said that a great deal of research on the tyrant virus exists right here. We should blow this place up. I found a file in the lab. Apparently, there's still a lot of tyrant virus here. We should blow this whole place up.
Right. The show must go on.
Probably could have easily changed that to Wesker being implied to be the one who activated the self-destruct, just like in Joe's campaign.
Wesker must have set it off. Let's hurry.
Especially since we now know that he did survive this encounter somehow. The story is better overall, but unfortunately, it's just not very good. Not as many potholes provided in games like Resident Evil 3, but it's still pretty messy. And now it's
Oh, come on, dude. Who said I'm gonna give up? I swear, dude, the people in Resident Evil used to say this.
I don't feel like the main story is what either game was
Look at Resident Evil
focus on, unlike the sequels. Instead, they put it on the presentation and gameplay. Now here's where I get to really start being nice, because this is possibly one of the most atmospheric games I've ever played. We are back to pre-rendered backgrounds, and they are the best we've seen yet, with only a few small problems popping up here or there, like this pixelated moth that didn't translate well into HD. You see, the Resident Evil remake originally came out on the GameCube, so it was intended to be viewed through a CRT TV.
Excuse me, sir.
That would cause a blur effect to cover everything and smooth images over in a natural way, or at least a way that we were all used to.
Yeah, you need a Rubik kid over
Unfortunately, that
there.
means the original feel will forever be left on those televisions. The HD release did its best to refine all of the backgrounds with fancy new modern technology. But it does seem that a few details slipped through the cracks. You can really see this when you compare the remastered remake to the Resident Evil 0 remaster that I'll be talking about in the next video. That game has some extremely clean backgrounds, but Resident Evil 1 didn't do the same thing that the remaster did to fully upscale the images. So this game ends up with some extremely clean models for the characters, but the pre-rendered backgrounds all look kind of blurry, and it feels like the characters don't fit into the world 100%. That might be something that's difficult to see if you're just watching this in a YouTube video, but trust me, it's very noticeable if you're playing the game yourself. Apparently, the lossless images weren't available for this game, so the devs weren't able to fully upscale the images like they did in Resident Evil 0, and instead used Photoshop wax filter to glaze over everything as a best attempt. You can fix this through mods on the PC, but it's a shame that the remaster couldn't reach its full potential like the prequel did. But honestly, that doesn't matter. The game still looks incredible. The difference between the original game on the PlayStation and this game on the GameCube is night and day. What was once a bunch of barren hallways, unlit environments, and whatever the hell the caves were supposed to be going for with the baby poop green blocky walls has now become lush with details. Small bits of clutter, paintings and photos, desks, drapes, elaborate wallpapers, plants, filth, and so much more cover every aspect of the game's scenery. Along with lighting occasionally filling the room with light. Everything feels so busy with detail. The mess in the bedroom tells a story of those who had once lived here. Entire bathrooms are torn apart by a root system trying to drain every nook and cranny of moisture. The laboratory carries a dank and disgusting atmosphere, with puddles and crime seen all over the place, making this lab seem shitty to work in even before everybody got turned into zombies. And you can even see your character's reflection on surfaces, which I think makes the whole place feel even wetter. I know there are plenty of fans of the original version who would describe the areas as eerily empty, but paired up with that game's goofier aspects, I just couldn't take that description seriously. It just felt so basic to me, like something was always missing, barren to the point of being uninteresting. But the remake remedied that problem. Now it feels like personality. Every single part of this place is just so memorable. After just one playthrough, I'm willing to bet that anybody would be able to piece together a map just because they were able to remember every single room so vividly. Not enough praise can be given to the way this game looks. And of course, with the pre-rendered backgrounds come with fixed camera angles. I might sound pretentious saying this, but I just don't understand people who play this game and still come away from it complaining about fixed camera angles being dated, because this game uses them better than anything we've seen before. Every angle feels dynamic and intentional already, but this game loves to go above and beyond with the camera's positioning. There's so many moments to show off, like what I presented earlier, with the shot that only exists to show you a moth, pixelation aside. But how about shots that utilize Dutch angles to give a sense of confusion and unease? Shots that come from under furniture, like you're taking a position of something prowling, waiting to jump out. Camera angles that don't directly show you a zombie in your vision, but instead reflect off of a mirror so you can get a glimpse of the monster just around the corner. Or close-ups on the character to give you a better view of the foggy lights covering their face, and bits of dust floating around. Yeah, I know the original had shots like this, but that was back when the characters' faces looked like... This game just looks so amazing. And what's incredible about it is that it's a game that came out 2 decades ago, and it still contains one of the best atmospheres I've seen in a video game. The music was updated as well, specifically the non-greatest hits director's cut version. I think that one goes without saying because we really didn't need to hear the farting clowns in high definition. But even if I'm nice to that soundtrack, it just wouldn't fit in this game at all. Often the tracks are just bad, but the ones that I would consider good are usually in the wrong song, or even trying to be spooky would come off as melodramatic and silly, something you play in a horror-themed children's game, not something that genuinely wanted to be taken seriously. The remake did a fantastic job at reinterpreting these songs. The safer music is usually an easy choice to look at, but as what might be one's introduction to the franchise, I think it might be the most important here.
Okay, I don't remember this room being this big. I don't understand why is it just freaking.
It really showcases that feeling of safety overlaid by imminent danger just outside. A calming tune plays, while underneath it is an eerie droning sound. Something that I'd liken to wails in the distance. And it can feel different emotions depending on what part of the track I focus on. One of the biggest songs that stood out to me, though, was the guardhouse's basement music. Slowed it way down and added an echo effect that makes it feel like it's reflecting off of all the empty hallways in the place. The music in the original was pretty good on its own, but as a remake, it really pulled out the potential that was already there, not just remove some of the more annoying aspects. Remember the dogs howling every 3 seconds in the original game? No more of that here. The dog still howls, but it's much more spread out, making a majority of the track consist of the ambient sounds of nature. Remember the dogs howling every 3 seconds in the original game? No more of that here. The dog still howls, but it's much more spread out, making a majority of the track consist of the ambient sounds of nature. Making a majority of the track consist of the ambient sounds of nature. Majority of the track consists of the ambient sounds of nature. Majority of the track consists of the ambient sounds of nature. A majority of the track consists of the ambient sounds of nature.
Hey!
Even if you can't consider this a fantastic soundtrack in its own right, you have to look at this as a remake and see the improvement. If I were going to give any sort of criticisms towards the soundtrack in this game, it would be that similar to the story, now that it's taken a more mature and ambient tone, not a whole lot of the songs end up being that memorable. There are definitely some bangers in there that I just brought up, but over 50% of these songs really are just ambient noises and low droning sounds.
Oh, snap!
Yeah. Saving every day never gets bored.
Designer styles.
Yeah.
I have a hard time remembering any of these tracks in the same way that I can for Resident Evil 2, 3, or even Code Veronica's. I'm here editing and trying to find background music to put behind my voice, and a lot of it just sounds the same. It all gives the exact same vibe. I get it, Resident Evil, you want to be taken seriously. You've grown up to be a very big boy, and I respect you. But part of me misses the bombastic and campy tones of the previous games. And now we get to the core of any video game discussion. I was already a big fan of the original game's gameplay. Despite being essentially the game that defined survival horror for the next generation, it managed to hit a lot of nails on the head right out of the gate. The level design was probably my favorite in the franchise. A mansion being the core area to explore was brilliant, as it allowed the map's layout to be compact and dense. Something
No
that was
offense, bro. No
almost
wonder
achieved in Resident Evil 2
what happens
wasn't
in Resident Evil 2
really
happens.
attempted in Resident Evil 3, and was
So I
way
could
too
say it in
spread out
a
in Code
proper
Veronica.
way.
The puzzles were mostly satisfying to solve with a
Yeah,
mix of logic,
enjoy that
informational, and your 4th grade homework. The items were scarce, inventory
I
was
do not
limited to
remember
6
these
and
guys
8
being
slots,
here.
and the enemies were relentless, for better or
Actually, there
worse.
was two
The
blue
game's biggest problems
herbs
were
in the
mainly
Resident
from it
Evil
being a
2
first
game.
attempt, and there not
Then
being
you see
enough
this
quality
fool
of
right
life
here,
changes
just
to
standing
make future
there.
games much more manageable. Definitely not perfect, and it led to some frustrating moments, but I still had a good time. All it needed was a bit of refinement, And that's exactly what remakes are made to do. The Resident Evil remake brought the game into the modern era with almost all of the quality of life changes that were slowly introduced into the franchise. We've got auto-aim, we've got quick turns, we've got free stare movement, we've got shaking enemies by going nuts on your controller, we've got enemies having a grace period after you get attacked so you don't get comboed to death. It probably much more than I missed, but I'm sure the comment section will be kind enough to remind us with minimal amount of insults to my intelligence. It didn't carry everything over though. You lost the ability to eat herbs right off the ground, and once again the dodge mechanic has been completely abandoned, though I really don't think it would have worked in a game like this. And newly introduced to the HD remaster, you all asked for it, so they gave you exactly what you wanted. Let's put your hands together for a control scheme that completely ruins the core gameplay. Oh boy, before we move on to every aspect of the gameplay, let's talk about that now. So the Resident Evil remake did kind of poppy in terms of sales, right? And according to everyone, from games journalists to the average consumer, a big point of contention was still one of Resident Evil's most defining factors: tank controls. I said it in the first video I made, and yes, I'm still going to die on this hill. Tank controls are not archaic, and they are not inherently bad. I believe anyone can learn how to utilize them if you just give yourself a chance to. Yeah, it's not really just from modern games, but that doesn't make it bad, especially when the whole game is built around it. See, that's the key factor here. How the game utilizes the controls that they give you. And the original Resident Evil 1's a hard game, don't get me wrong, but if it was the type of game where it's throwing incredibly quick and fast enemies at you that you were expected to react to at lightning speed, then you would have an argument as to why the controls don't work. You'd be put up against things that are attacking way too fast for you to react to with this control scheme. Imagine if we put the enemies out of something like Dead Space and put them into this. It would be mismatched. But that doesn't apply here. An overwhelming majority of the enemies that you fight in classic Resident Evil games are just as slow and stiff as you are. This is why something like zombies were the perfect choice as the main enemy for these games. They're slow, they can't turn around real good, and neither can you. And the only time that you ran into problems is whenever the enemies were too fast for you to react to. The problem is not inherent to the controls. But regardless of what I or the countless number of classic Resident Evil stands say, the fact is that your average person is not willing to learn. And even if they do, they probably still just simply don't like the tank controls because there are better alternatives nowadays. The times, they were a-changing. And so to qualm the layman, the HD remaster came with what is referred to as alternate controls, and it fucks with the entire game. Since people couldn't grasp your controls being relative to the character's position rather than the camera's position, alternate controls changes to be relative to the camera. Now left and right means move left or right instead of just rotate left or right, and moving up or down moves you up and down instead of just forwards and backwards. Sounds innocuous at first, but the game was made with tank controls in mind. Specifically, the fixed camera angles complement tank controls perfectly. Tank controls keep things consistent, no matter the camera angle. When your perspective is constantly shifting around outside of your control, you don't want the meaning of what button you're holding down on the controller to change too, or else you're going to be thrown around and then have to readjust. Now that sounds familiar. Where did I hear that from?
Now, if the movement of your character is based on camera position, then when the camera changes, you're going to be moving in a direction that you weren't anticipating. But if you have tank controls where the character's movement is based on the character's position itself, then there's not going to be any difference in the movement of the character when the camera changes position.
Oh my god, I love being vindicated. You have no idea how many people left comments on that video saying something like, the remake fixed the tank controls, so actually you can't defend it here. Because no, that is exactly what happens when you turn on alternate controls. Anytime the camera changes positions, you have to constantly readjust your brain and hand to what the new perspective shows. This results in a lot of these little spinny things. I know this might be hard to visualize when just watching a video, but try to stick with me. On a controller, when the camera changes and you need to alter the direction you're moving, your thumb ends up either circling around to the position or going to neutral and then the new direction, depending on the context. This causes your character to suddenly have to readjust in the blink of an eye, so they often do this little spin before getting back on track. And God help you if you try to switch direction at the same moment a camera change occurs, because that could cause you to get stuck in this loop where you keep trying to move one way, but the relative direction keeps changing too. So you just go back and forth for a few seconds until you wrangle everything down and get back on your feet. The only grace to help you is that if you repress that feeling to immediately change the direction you're holding when the camera angle shifts, you can run in a straight line while holding that position. But you can't have the game read every little input change on the controller because humans aren't robots. You make little subtle movements on the analog sticks sometimes, so some specifications have been made to compensate for that. The devs understood that you might move the stick just a little bit without thinking, and without help, running in a straight line can become needlessly difficult. So now, every time you move, your character's direction gets locked in place, so long as you don't rotate the joystick about 20 degrees in any direction. If you want to play a game that doesn't take that into consideration, go play Devil May Cry. That's a game that still has fixed camera angles for some ungodly reason, and it's the worst part about that game. Dante will spin at the drop of a hat, and it can completely ruin the flow of your combo. It ends up affecting the Resident Evil remake, though, in a completely different way. Whenever you try to remodel the controls in a way that the original game didn't intend, it causes a lot of side effects that the game isn't prepared for without completely redoing everything. Like, sometimes you need those subtle movements on the controller, but because the game is holding you back from making them, you end up awkwardly running into a wall until you manage to jerk back your control. You just need to turn a few degrees to the left or right so you're not losing your speed, but then you have to pull out of it, and then you pull too far, and then you're running into a wall in the opposite direction, so then you have to readjust to the relative position of the camera again, and just condense all of this down to a few seconds of annoyance that occurs over and over and over throughout the entire game. After all that, you're probably saying, just shut up and go back to classic controls then, Grandpa. But that's the weird thing. Despite all the annoying problems it causes, alternate controls also make you crazy overpowered. The game never expected you to be able to make turns this quickly. The quick turn was supposed to be your max speed at turning around. Everything here was built around how fast your character could move, including your turning speed. Those poor zombies were never prepared for you to create a cyclone right in front of them. The tactic of baiting an attack and then moving around them is incredibly easy to do in this game. You can bait the attack and then bail faster than the enemy can respond, and it's pretty easy to do. This control scheme has the capability of breaking the entire game, absolutely spitting on the intricately designed difficulty that was originally here. But it's such a weird case, because if you're playing for maximum efficiency, you'll be using the alternate controls for the speed it offers you, but you'll also be constantly annoyed as you fight the game to do the simplest things. It feels awful to use a majority of the time, and it ignores the intended difficulty. So honestly, I simply think it should have been included. If it helps somebody get into the franchise, then I guess it served its purpose. If you do play this game yourself, though, I would recommend the original controls. What I find weird, though, is why didn't they go for another contender if they were trying to please newcomers this much? Honestly, do we still need door transitions? Back then, they were being used as both a legal function future of 2015, do we really need it? From my experience and watching other people play these games, the door transitions usually do a great job of building up tension as you go through a new world because you never know what's going to be there. The problem comes in these rooms a lot of times. Whenever you get lost or confused or you don't know where a certain item is, then you're going through room after room after room with no clear direction. Whenever you want to speed up and get to the next part of the game already, you're having to sit through all these goddamn transitions. And you know who's most likely to get in that scenario? New players. Yeah, the transitions are iconic to Resident Evil. I'm not saying get rid of them. But at the very least, why can't we skip them? Why can't we just press the start button and skip to the next part already? Or even better, have an option that you can select whether or not you want the door transitions. I just think it's weird that so much work was put into the control scheme, but not into quality of life features like this. Okay, with the alternate controls constantly lingering over our head, we can now get into the actual gameplay and how it's been changed. Once you start a new game in the remake, you'll be asked to select one of 3 choices. These are the difficulty options, and they're weirdly worded as a questionnaire for some kind of nature walk you prefer. I'm pretty sure this is supposed to reference how the Stars team is heading into the Arclay Mountains. But in my experience, I've seen this confuse new players more than impress them from the creativity. These choices represent very easy, and normal difficulties. The HD remaster introduced the third difficulty, a very easy mode. Well, the original release only had 2, because again, the devs were worried about the game being too difficult for the younglings who never touched a game like this before. If you're asking where hard difficulty is, it is specifically restricted for a second playthrough, for some reason. The difficulty here ended up having pretty limited applications, with only a few stats and value drops being increased or decreased depending on what you chose. Seeing most of that for the in-game part, since hard isn't unlocked until then. But for now, I'll just say that normal is
that's the downstairs, that's for sure, and I know it's
what I
not
found to be the most reasonable experience.
Yeah, I wonder why the players are preventing my passage. Because this is a Resident Evil 2 scene and they don't want us to go down there. Monsters. Okay, seriously? Who removed all the little stuff on the floor from Leon and Claire?
And just like I said in my first video,
The zombies made?
really confused why they made Chris front and center here. The majority of players will just pick the first option they see. And Chris
Is this my boy Marvin?
with a less intriguing story. If you play through Chris first and already know that Wesker is the big bad man, then seeing Barry get lost in Jill's story removes any impact the twist might have had. And new players really shouldn't be stuck with 6 inventory slots. They're the most likely to make mistakes, and having such a harsh limitation will only deter them from playing more. Jill offers a much more comfortable experience and should be where new players begin. And honestly, is just the game mode that I prefer to play when I play this game. Once you finally get into the game, you'll see that the mansion and all the events that take place within it have been massively overhauled. Entire new rooms have been created, some of which offer a new path to circle back to one of the 2 mansion safe rooms. And of course, a majority of the items and enemies have been moved and edited. Sometimes the change is small, just to build an atmosphere, like the shine that was given to Forrest, who seems to have now given up his birds. The game moves back with some birds, only for Forrest's zombified corpse to get up and punish you for your greed. There's a refresh that purposely plays to the expectations of those who played the original game. Before, this hallway would catch new players off
Bro, why do I still have this here?
minding your own business, and then
I'm treating this like a murder case. Some questions just don't have answers.
it was shocking and genuinely threatening, so it made a lasting impression. But when a veteran player comes into the remake, they approach this hallway, asshole puckered in anticipation, and oh, you got me. For a second there, I thought that you were tough. But more often, the game utilizes a new layout to either make your life easier or to make you suffer with even more limited resources for you to manage. I think it was a brilliant choice to make this one door, one that leads directly to one of the safe rooms, a limited use passage where the doorknob breaks after so many uses. It becomes one way only, and if you become too reliant on running to the storage chest, then you can also have fun running down that alternate hallway. You know, the one that just a few minutes ago had a bad case of... Oh, and don't be too reliant on just running away from enemies all the time now. You thought that leaving that one guy alive in that room that you never returned to was smart.
Alexa.
Brother, these fellas can bust open doors now. Many of the zombies will just open a door later on, repopulating a room that you once cleared out. So what you thought might have been a smart choice before can end up directly blowing up in your face just because you wanted to save those 8 handgun rounds. That shark tank in the restaurant is a massive blow up. What was once just an awkward square that lasted literally 1 minute has turned into an entire flooded laboratory. Realistically, you won't stay in this room for very long, but I love how the music really starts to kick in once you get a glimpse of the single massive shark that's swimming around deep below. Like he's just browsing the buffet for now.
Yeah, what you want?
Offers one of the few incident attacks in any game as well. Well, then there's this very tense segment where the shark starts trying to break through the glass to the room you're in, and you have to fight with faulty computers and machinery to close the shutters and drain the water. The segment is actually really easy and quick to get through if you know what you're doing, but on your first playthrough, this part really knows how to send you into a panic. And then immediately after that, you meet the big boy himself in shallow water. Despite having trained with the entire aqua green, he still manages to corner you, and you have to utilize some nearby machinery to electric. Of course, the key item that you need ends up falling directly in front of his body, anxiously preparing for a jump scare. But nothing happens. I love when war games force you to initiate something that you really don't want to do. Because you just know it's gonna go badly, but you gotta continue the game. Like the big bad doggy that you have to call with the whistle. The game sets up that there's this extra aggressive Cerberus out on the balcony with something around his neck. And when you get out there, does the game trigger the events itself? Oh no. You need to go into your inventory and willingly blow into that thing yourself. And if you think it is just a normal dog,
Rocky,
it actually is souped up with extra health. And it all happens in this really cramped space. So there's a pretty good chance you're going to get a bite or two taken out of you. And then there's the huge don't panic moment in the lab where you have to refill the fuel canister. The game makes it very clear that you cannot shake this vial too much or else it'll explode right there in your pocket, causing an instant death. So you have to carefully and slowly walk all the way back to the generator room, knowing that any second something could pop right out of you and kill you in an instant. On my first playthrough, this was overwhelmingly nerve-wracking to me. On subsequent playthrough, you come to realize that so long as you're previously, this part is nothing more than a walk through the day. That first time, it really knows how to fuck with you. And surprisingly, this is actually one of the few moments I feel could have totally been improved by the alternate control scheme, at least on a controller. With 10 controls, it's simple, just don't press the run button. When using an analog stick, you have to create a mental effort to not push too hard in one direction at all times, lest you push too far and help the lab see God's glory. Then there would be more tension and focus required even on repeat playthroughs. But that's just me dreaming, because the alternate controls let you use 10 controls with the D-pad, and even if they didn't, you could just manually switch controls back in the menu. It would probably be neglectful if I didn't bring up the other side of this argument, though. Look, I'm a fan of these moments, but there's no denying that whenever you replay this game, these moments only have diminishing returns. Yeah, I like to play their video games more than once. I know, crazy. When you know that the shark isn't gonna jump up and bite you, or that nothing's gonna pop out and attack you while you're carrying a fuel canister, many of these originally scary moments become tedious. Games like Resident Evil often heavily encourage replays, so looking at it from the angle of a second playthrough is very important. That's why it's a shame that this game couldn't have taken notes from something like Resident Evil 3 and incorporated at least a bit of randomization whenever you start a new game. On the subject of shames, there is one small difference that I'm really disappointed didn't make it in. Whenever you play the remake, both the Chris and Jill campaigns end up playing out almost identically. Aside from the story cutscenes and scripted events, everything is the same. The path you begin, the general route you take throughout the mansion, and the first two puzzles you have to solve. What I remember catching me off guard in the original game was that depending on who you play with, the initial path you take for the first hour or so is completely different, solely because this door here requires a different key for each character. There's a nice way to shake things up on a second playthrough, at least until the building fully opened up and the paths merge. But when I played as Chris in this game, I remembered having a lot more desperation for ammo because of this. Less of the ammo spots I was aware of were available yet, and because Chris doesn't get the shotgun until much later, I had less means to defend myself. It felt much more challenging to me, but I never ran into that problem in the remake. Overall, the remake just feels easier than the original, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. One reason is that the game introduced a new resource called defensive items, with both characters having a unique one for each of their playthroughs. These are items that exist as a get-out-of-jail-free card whenever you get grabbed, allowing for a bit more leniency when it comes to taking damage. Daggers are available to both characters, and they don't do anything special besides deal a bit of damage. Jill gets these batteries, which deal a lot of damage, but might not kill all zombies depending on the difficulty you're playing on. While Chris gets flash grenades, which will kill and decapitate a zombie on any difficulty, at the cost of having a little bit of a delay, and the capability of hurting yourself with the explosion. With these, you're allowed to make a mistake or two without eating into your health reserves. And these are fantastic, because on harder difficulties, taking one hit can be extremely crucial. And even whenever you're an expert, you sometimes just make a stupid mistake. This ensures that you aren't punished too harshly and are actually allowed to play at a level just below perfection without trivializing the game. And talking about additional limited resources, here is one of the biggest additions in the game. As you explore around, you might notice a few bodies laying around. That's kind of weird, but what's weirder is that every time I kill a guy, their body doesn't disappear. Usually the game would delete those every time you come back to an area, but but now they seem to be sticking around. It's not that unusual, just your average rotting corpse, quite a few of those nowadays. So we'll just be passing by to pick up the...
Where should we put all your luggage, Ms. Hilt?
In the connecting room, please.
Need an extra room?
Oh my god. Bro, it's like I can't watch anything on my second TV because it's gonna say copyright. Like, no one's copyright. I'm just watching
Right
TV,
in the position
bro.
where it's more likely that you'll just get a brief glimpse of it suddenly rising off the ground before you go to the door, making you painfully aware that regardless of whatever the hell that was, you're gonna have to say hello when you run back out. Crimson Heads are extremely aggressive
Bro,
and
this place is
fast,
already
easily
fucked.
catching up with you if you make even the slightest wrong move. And the best part about them, how often they exist is up to
Man,
the
you can't
player's
open
skill
shit
and
around here,
understanding of the
man.
game. So the zombies magically disappearing from reality whenever you went through a door, that doesn't happen anymore. When you kill a zombie, their body is going to just stick around, acting as a constant reminder of what you've done so far. There's a note next to a lighter that informs you about the proper way to dispose of bodies. But why exactly you might be doing that was still unknown before now. After meeting our friend here, you're likely to start to realize why. Depending on your difficulty, after
Y'all seeing this shit right here?
time, any zombie that you left laying around after you killed it will start to get back up. And if you've killed every single enemy you've came across so far, you might be shitting yourself right about now. According to the scientists who studied the T-virus's effects, anytime a human host body becomes incapacitated, the virus within them begins to reactivate and heavily mutates the body. All the blood in the body rushes to the skin, turning it a deep red, and they grow intimidating claws, while drastically increasing their hostility. When the scientists first discovered this, they lost several men and had to walk the body away deep underground. The only way to stop this from happening is to destroy the head using incendiary grenade rounds or preemptively burn the body which you killed. And this is where the flask and the lighter come into play. Pour some gasoline on the bodies and burn them away before they get back up and justify your life insurance. But oh no! There's only so much gasoline in these containers, and the flask can only hold enough for 2 uses. This puts you in the extremely tense situation where even killing an enemy can cost you in the long run. Having to decide who you kill and who you run past has always been a thing in these games, but now it has even more depth. If you kill something, you're still not safe. This is also weirdly one of the few advantages Chris gets in his campaign, and it isn't even really an advantage. It's like, I have to lug around this canteen and lighter is chill. Now I only have 6 slots left. How will I ever survive? I always have a lighter, so I only have to worry about the canteen, leaving me with 5 slots left. Shit. Oh, and I better hold on to those small keys. You know I'll need them, so, 4 slots? But still, Crimson Heads are amazing! And few visuals are as striking as the slow build-up to the only one you're required to fight. There it lies, suspended in chains, deep in a hole under a grave. You don't even know what's in there. It could be after you start applying death masks to the nearby statues, we see chains break off. They don't disconnect from the coffin. Oh no, they're disconnecting from something within. And blood pours out of each new hole. Each new mask presumably tears more and more pieces off of whatever's resting inside, until the whole coffin comes crashing down, and we're locked inside with it. What the hell kind of mechanism locked and unlocked the door here? Don't fucking ask. It's fucking cool. Shut up. With the speed and aggression of the Crimson Heads, it isn't the worst idea to take them out so you don't have to deal with them harassing you. But just this once, you're required to kill one. They do have a grab move, just like when there are zombies. And if you have a defensive item, you can easily deflect the attack while dealing a bit of damage. But what makes them so much more dangerous is that they seem to prefer a slash attack that doesn't go through the grapple animation. At this point, they're like a combo of hunters and zombies, an unholy fusion offering you the worst of both worlds, but not being that punishing for a mid-game monster. Using any kind of powerful weapon is likely enough to sunlock one in place, but that doesn't change the fact that they are a huge threat. With that, I'll move into talking about how all the other enemies have been changed. All the monsters in the original game had this really nasty habit of stunlocking you to death. It was entirely possible for a group of zombies to get multiple grabs on, though that was unlikely due to low number per room. The dogs could give you the one-low combo, faster hunters were the worst of it all. Luckily, most of these problems were fixed in later entries and are the case now as well, meaning that death by massive bullying is much less common. Most of the core moves used by newer monsters aren't that changed much. Chimeras, crows, and snakes all behave almost identically to their counterparts. But I guess I should make note there are a few new tricks involved with them, like how the snakes used to never bother anybody. They'd just fall down behind you while you ran right past them. That happens here too, but there's also a few snakes poised and ready to strike right down this path. You can see them if you look for them, but most new players will likely get caught off guard and can result in an unfortunate case of poison if you don't watch out. I think the biggest common enemy change has to be with the hunters. In the original game, they were ridiculous. Taking about 4 shotgun shells to kill, having long invincibility frames when getting up or jumping, they were often placed in rooms with multiple items in it, and the ability to immediately jump after getting knocked down. They have an insta-kill move, and they can attack and move so swiftly that if they got to the right rhythm, your run would end right there. This was overkill, if you ask me. RE1 was already harder in a lot of ways, but the hunters were just cruel, and I personally found it very unfun to deal with, especially since in the original Resident Evil release, the auto-aim system was not a thing. You might get scary points because every time I entered a room with one of these things, I feared for my virtual life, but I don't think it was worth it. A lot of that has been heavily nerfed in the remake. Now hunters only take about 2 shotgun rounds to kill, and their movements are a bit slower and more predictable. They still are a very real threat, but the cheapness and teaming is not worth. The instant kill move that was in the original returns here, but it's a lot slower than easy to predict. At the time of writing, the Resident Evil Wiki says that this only occurs whenever the player is in orange caution or water, but I literally have footage of me in fine and getting insta-kills. I don't know, I feel like somebody's missing some information here. Leave a comment below if you know how the actually works. Oh, and the most important thing got removed from the video game. The hunters no longer open the door like a polite little boy. Main takeaway here is that the hunters are easier now, and that goes for most of the bosses as well. Yawn in the original game would absolutely love to wrap around you while attacking fairly frequently. You get your feet all tied up in them and you wouldn't be able to run away. So I found it much easier to just unload my most powerful weapons as fast as possible before taking too much damage. Yeah, I haven't played the original enough times to know how to master every single fight like a speedrunner, but your average player won't have either. Now, Yawn is a lot more chunky. He isn't as mobile and his attacks are much slower. He even kinda has a pattern to his movement, where he'll slink behind these bookcases every so often, allowing you to spank his butt with a shotgun a few times. You might still get in a situation where he blocks you out, and you might get hit a few times. For the most part, he's much easier to avoid and fight against now. A lot fairer. And the fight with Plant 42 is much easier, but more complex at the same time. Before, it would drip acid down on your head every few seconds, causing you to have to go into this repetitive pattern of firing one shot before moving a bit, then firing again, then repeat while avoiding tentacles until it dies. Here, the plant will have much more telegraphed attacks that cover entire areas rather than just right where you're standing. If you're too slow, you can get covered in acid even if you're trying to run away because that entire upper floor is getting coated now. And the game gives you much more time to focus on evasion, as the plant will occasionally open and close its inner bowl. Obviously, attacking is the best way to deal damage, so waiting for the opportunity to watching tentacles and showers is a good way to go about it. The Black Tiger boss fight has also been following the trend of making the original's moves a lot slower. The main thing that I'm glad was removed was that stupid attack where it would jump to the side and spin on you whenever you attack it. That was way too fast to react to. And for the most part, there wasn't anything I could do because I usually had to kill the thing. Now it seems much more interested in flashing its fangs before knocking the shit out of you.
When it comes to romance, we all need a little help now and then while writing our story. And today, dearie,
leaving you much more ample time to attack the spider or the door if you just want to run away. And then we get the first and, I guess, only new boss fight that was added to the Resident Evil Remake. If you even call it a boss, it depends on how you define that kind of thing. Because in every encounter with Lisa Trevor, you never have to fire a single shot. For the most part, she just acts as an obstacle. Like a majority of the big bad enemies in these games, it's not generally a good idea to just fight them head on. That should be even more apparent whenever you realize that Lisa Trevor can't even be killed in this game. Briefly incapacitated, sure, but she'll just get back up in a few seconds. And she won't even drop any interesting items if you down her, so just avoid her if you can. The biggest threat that Lisa introduces to new players is that they might start unloading all their precious ammo into this unkillable enemy. You got that first encounter in the cabin where all you have to do is squeeze past her, whether or not you take a hit doesn't matter. And then you meet her again deep in the caves after you take the elevator, and she's constantly roaming this circular path. But here, if you see her, then the solution is usually just go the opposite direction. The big encounter to take note of is whenever you confront her in front of her mother's coffin. Depending on if you let Barry live, you might have some backup while you try to push these rocks off a cliff. Lisa does have the ability to knock you off the cliff and end your run fairly late in the game, and this is technically the only opportunity that you have to actually kill Lisa Trevor, though she's probably not dead. For gameplay purposes, it's the place where you kill her. Deal enough damage to her while she's hanging off of a ledge and you can knock her off, permanently defeating her for the rest of the game. But that's not what I consider to be the interesting part of this fight. If she gets too close to your partner, or they end up taking too much aggro, then Lisa can easily kill them. Regardless, this part is very easy. If you just run from rock to rock, there's a good chance that your partner will completely cover himself. Oh, and if you wonder what happens in Chris's campaign, if you let Lisa kill Wesker, it's nothing. Wesker falls down again in the laboratory just like normal. Nobody even acknowledges it. And lastly, for the bosses, there is the Tyrant in his mutated Super Tyrant form. And honestly,
I had no idea what I was doing the whole time.